meeting rooms do we really want, those type of things, the size and the cost. I'm surprised that we're now thinking about spending more money than we have, 1.2 million. That's concerning. But I do think that getting community input based on the work has been done is probably a smart thing at this point in time. So we can further judge, how fast we want to go. But I think I think it's important that while the library committee is working very diligently and they're working very hard on making things move forward, I think it's important that they understand the perception by others outside the inner circle that perhaps maybe the outreach hasn't been as open or as clear or as accepting of input as perhaps others in the community might have desired.
Well, that's it for me. I will make again a comment that says, recognizing that tonight, all we're asking for is to review and approve the criteria for site selection so that we can get public input, so that we can have the things that Councilmember Widmer is asking for, which I think is very important. All we're asking tonight is to have the council approve going forward. It's very hard for me to see how we can deny that in view of the fact that with all the work that's been done, and that what we're going forward to do tonight is to get the public input that everybody is asking for. So the public session is closed. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that I am not opposed to the project of a new library, the thought, the concept, the ideal of it, whether or not it is expanded and renovated in this historic building next to us or integrated somehow in this property. I think that it appears to me and to other people who've talked to me about this that it's a fait accompli, that it's somewhere going to go into the park. They're very concerned about that. They want to make sure that we have an overall comprehensive master plan of all of the town's facilities. Maybe the town center should go over to the park, and then this property is done something else with. That would be a highest and best use. We need to think in those big, broad terms, so rather than just little fiefdoms. We're not independent from each other. It's all the town facilities. That's all I'm trying to encourage us to do as good stewards of our properties. And the public outreach, I think, has been sorely missing from the initial needs assessment survey that was sent out, where only 148 people responded to today, and to only having 2 planned community meetings in the middle of summer when most people are on vacation. And I just think that, we're not giving our residents a fair shake in that.
Okay.
Well, Olive Palmer once said that apparently, according to her relatives, that she saw no higher use of the park than for a library to go in there. And when the park was being considered being given to the town, go back into the historical records, the #1 use they wanted for the park was for it to be used for a library site. Having said that, I would move that we approve the criteria for site selection and public input process for the new Atherton Library as developed and recommended by the Atherton Library Building Steering Committee and Consultants Group for Architects.
I will second.
I'd like to ask Councilmember Lewis before we do that. She'd indicated that perhaps a date is a better time might be appropriate due to people's vacation holidays, and I don't think she finished with what that is. So before we vote on it, I'd like to know if there was an alternate date.
Other than June 25th?
That you suggested.
I think that in my opinion, I think that we should use this summer to do the master site planning for all of the town facilities and bring it back to the residents with, in the fall, when people are back from vacation, after we do major public outreach.
Elizabeth, that's not what Council Member Whitmer was asking. He was asking you, do you have an alternate date for the public input from June the 25th? That's all he was asking.
I said the fall.
And we have a motion on the floor at
Is
the
that
moment.
What can we ask?
I think that these dates can be changed.
Are we talking about item 21?
No,
No, we're talking about item 22. We have a motion, and we have a motion on the floor at the moment. At the moment, I would like to call for a vote on this. Can we have a vote? Oh,
Is it possible to just add, like, keep the dates in place and possibly have one more date in the fall? And it's not like-
all in favor of item 22?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, well, the motion is approved. Okay, now we go to item number 21. The motion on motion 21, can I just have silence, please? Item 21 is to approve the consulting service contract amendment to number 1, Group 4 Architectural Research and Planning, in the amount of $9,900 for attending, preparing for 2 additional community meetings requested by the Atherton Library Building Steering Committee. And I guess that these are public meetings so that we can get public input. So I would bring it to the council and ask them for their comments on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, item 22 was the tee up 21. Item 21 talks about 2 additional meetings, and I think that one of the reasons why I said what I said in item 22 is to try to indicate that it's not a slam dunk, that there's a long ways to go here before I think the community is going to buy in to whatever plan that you come up with. I don't think that you can have too many meetings. And I am very concerned that, I don't know how much participation, if you get the normal amount of participation as we do in most meetings, not many people are going to show up. So I'm still concerned about, well, how do you really get the word out to the community, and how do you really get them engaged in this whole thing? How do you really get them to express their views as to whether or not they want to, what they want to do with their tax dollars for the library?
Well, I guess this item here is so that we can have more community meetings, and hopefully at the end of these community meetings, we'll have a very good feel for what the community wants. And my own feeling is if the community meetings are not at the right times, I'm sure the library committee, if they feel that there will be some times that would be better, would be happy to modify. But I think at the moment, are we going to approve $9,900 for these 2 additional community meetings? That's really what this item is.
Well, I beg to differ on it. I think this is a good place to have a debate, to have a discussion as to whether 2 additional meetings is going to be enough or not. And I personally don't think it is. And I think that the timing of these meetings, summertime, I think is less than advantageous. And so again, my reason for item 22 was to try to demonstrate the fact that this is not a slam dunk. There's going to have to be a lot more dialogue, a lot more effort, and not just a couple of meetings, a lot more effort put into this if it's going to be successful.
Other council members?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've said that all along, that to get people engaged, actually, there's a tenet in advertising. You have to do it. I know, Denise, I got this too, but it almost got thrown out because, it just does. It's like, a lot of people get junk mail. But emails, calls, phone trees, local charrettes, getting people to come to the pavilion, for a major meeting is very difficult. Going to their neighborhoods with little discussion groups and stuff, I think that is one way to do it too. We need more public outreach. And to think that we're only going to have 2 meetings at the end of June and then go to Parks and Recs and then come back to council for a decision in August is just not enough. It's just not enough. So I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Carlson. This is the first time I've heard of his views, but I've made my views very public in the past that we need as much community outreach as possible, and I don't think 2 meetings at the end of June are enough.
I don't know that this says it's 2 and only 2. I think you can evaluate the attendance, you can evaluate the data, and if it looks like you haven't gotten enough data, enough of a sampling, I think you can make a determination at that time, but I don't think you can prejudge what you're going to get. And I think you can say we're approving this with the caveat that we want to make sure that we get enough value to be able to move forward. That's fine. I think that is inherent in any decision you make. But I don't think you can say that 2 more meetings or 5 more meetings or 10 more meetings is going to do it when you've already suggested that people don't attend meetings. So I think that you just have to wait and see what the outcome is and then make a determination based upon your own good judgment whether or not you feel you have enough information to be able to rely in the best interests of the community kind of way on that data to go forward with a valid decision-making process.
First off, I think that I agree with the earlier comments, and we discussed at the last item that we need to start getting community information. I do agree with my fellow council members to say that I'm not sure, I agree, I don't think that 2 meetings are going to do it, and I do think doing it in the middle of the meeting and the overall schedule that was presented here, where everything is a slam dunk by the end of August, I think is premature, and I don't want to be prejudiced on saying that, yeah, just having 2 meetings and then that's it. I think it determines on how many people show up to the meeting, and if it's a significant sample, and if it's a significant sample of Atherton residents. So I think that type of information is necessary to get started. I'm hesitant to say let's not do the meeting, and I was hesitant to say let's not do the meeting because we've already sent this thing out, so there is already some things moving on. So I think that because we've got the process in motion, then I think that we need to start getting the input when we can get it. But at the same time, I do think that this is moving in an expedited manner, and people are working on a clock schedule as opposed to working on a quality schedule. And I think that we're going to need to do the thing right to get the proper input. And it is concerning that a lot of people are on vacation and won't be back until mid-August. So you're not going to get all the input perhaps that you need. So you need to possibly consider, having additional meetings. So secondly is, and I've spoken with our city attorney, when we amended the statement of work and the contract that was passed to us by the library committee, you may recall that we'd seen that there was the old contract that the city had been using had some standard faults in it. And what we did with some of the edits is we tied in the RFP requirements, the proposal requirements, etc., into what it is that put those into the overall description of what the overall services are that we're buying. So I've asked our attorney to please review that and to review those documents in light of the fact that I'm not sure we need to be paying for these additional fees, because the RFP requirement said meetings. And so whether or not we pay those is one thing. There were lists of schedules that were in the proposal, but the RFP and the order of precedence in the contract is really what we have to be managed to. Lastly, I don't understand when there's split fees for people coming down and holding the same meeting and showing the same charts and saying the same thing twice, how that costs $5,000, be that as it may, but why we're asking for an overrun of an additional 10% when it's fixed fee. If in fact we have to pay this, I don't even see why that extra $900 is in here. So I'm not in favor of the $900, and I am in favor of making sure we do due diligence on this contract to make sure that we're not paying for something that we've already paid for and that we don't need to go with these additional expenses.
Well, I will say this. I also believe that I would like to see City Attorney Connor's comments on it, because I hate contingency fees. Unfortunately, I think our previous Director of Public Works loved contingency fees, so they were on every contract. I think I would like to ask our Director of Public Works if these things can be taken out, and I would also like to ask him to look at the contract to make sure that the $9,900 asked for the architects is not covered by the contract. But based upon all the comments by 2 of the council members, that we need to have more public input, we need more input from the public, it's hard for me to see why we should try to hold up having these public meetings. So my view would be, if the $9,900 is justified based on what our city attorney says, I would like to go forward with this. Okay, now I'll open up to the public.
Thank you. Joan Sanders yet again. I think with all the business of trying to slow it down, not get it expedited, one thing that we are forgetting is that over probably 3 years ago, we had a seismic study of our library, and we need over $300,000 worth of seismic upgrades to make that building safe. And we have over 120 school children in there at programs quite often. So it is something to think about with the earthquakes in Japan and the volcanoes going off, that if we're going to be prepared for a disaster, we need to put $300,000 into that building.
Public comments?
Pat Darby. I'm just a lowly volunteer at the library. I'm not on the task force, but I do go to witness the incredible dedication that this group have put together. And I just want to say that your suggestion, Elizabeth, I really approved of, you know, little sections of the town being addressed. I'm very, very nervous. I don't like machines here. But that is coming. That has been discussed. I've heard it discussed. This is just the beginning. You have to start somewhere. There have to be initial meetings. And even if you don't approve of the flyer that went out, I bet quite a lot of people read it, because the library, the Friends of the Library, put out a free, well, twice or 3 times a year, folder, you know, with all kinds of programs. We are known. Our little library is known. And then I want to tell you, you talked about the not just being for Atherton. It's, you know, it's going to be for other people. But how many other people are in the Little League? I think it's about 1/3 of Atherton residents that play in the Little League, and we're all for that. About giving money to the schools for other buildings. $39 or $37 million Performing Arts Center. My grandson goes to Menlo Atherton. He's never been to one thing in there that the school has put on that he could participate in or enjoy. Not one. So this is just a beginning. You've got to start somewhere. It's the same with the task force of this. I am so for the new center for the town center. Atherton is becoming dismal. It's ratty around the corners. think I've got my point over. But I really believe we are just beginning. We are just beginning. There will be many, many meetings.
Any other public comments?
Item 21 isn't about whether we should have a library or not, it's about whether we should spend almost $10,000 on 2 meetings. It's a fiscal item. You still have city employees in this room who are looking at layoffs, who are looking at salary cuts. We still have a fiscal crisis. And I think to spend $10,000 on a discretionary item, when we're talking about laying employees off, is ill-advised.
Well, one of the things you have to consider about whether or not this project goes forward is that it would be a job producer. And whether or not it goes forward, we've already decided, will depend upon public input. And everyone here agrees that we need more public input. And if that's the price of public input, we don't have a lot of control over what the public input is going to cost.
I think you can have a meeting without spending $10,000.
But this could conceivably mean a lot more jobs. It could conceivably mean a much better image for this town. And it could certainly mean a resource for people who are looking for jobs, who are looking to connect. And I think all around a positive experience for everyone who is employed, unemployed, or wants to work together with their neighbor, be it an Atherton resident or non-resident. I would like to address the comment about the $10,000 for the community meetings. It actually involves a number of consultants to attend those meetings so that the residents, if a number of residents come and have questions, there can be participation and answers. So it's not just one consultant, it's really the whole group, including the landscape architect and different planners, so that everybody is there to provide community as much information as possible. But most importantly, the funds to pay for these meetings are from library funds. These are not city discretionary funds. All the consultants, the staff time, anything related to the library, the costs are from the library fund.
Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Are there any other council comments? If not,
I move we approve the contract amendment to the agreement for architectural services for Group 4 for $9,900.
can you just add to the motion, subject
Subject to review by council as to the validity of the 2 additional meetings being charged.
Right, and elimination of the contingency.
Yes.
I will second it. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Well, we have several other items here. I think the next item on the agenda is, see, we've covered everything, I think, that was taken out. Next item on the agenda is this motion to take the next item on the agenda is an urgent motion. It was brought in tonight that we approved having here.
We had item 13 still to discuss.
Item 13.
Yeah, that was pulled by members of the.
I thought we discussed it.
Oh, she didn't go on it, you're right.
I thought that comment was just a
I think
comment.
Carol did.
Yeah.
Carol did.
Carol, do you want to discuss this item again?
I do. And I feel a bit ill-equipped to discuss, I don't want to discuss things that are really don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't feel know what I'm talking about on code enforcement. Because I don't know how many code enforcement cases there are, I don't know what the issues are. But I asked to be pulled for a different reason, and the different reason goes back to the fiscal well-being of the town. And I think the town, this is one of our greatest issues, and that we have to do everything to improve our fiscal well-being and our fiscal health. And we need to ask ourselves whether there's a legitimate alternative to continuing the expenditures for code enforcement. As I recall, code enforcement external source was only put into play 3 or so years ago. It was handled by staff before that. And I think the town needs to be looking at zero-based budgeting for every single expenditure at a time when we are talking about having some pretty severe salary cuts and some pretty severe staffing cuts. And I'm not convinced that code enforcement has to be handled. And by the way, we've been the recipient of some of the code enforcement calls in the last couple of years on some of our building projects, and these have been capricious and nuisance calls, quite frankly. I think there is a place for code enforcement. I'm not sure that we have to pay an outside vendor for it. And I am concerned about the staffing cuts that we're anticipating, many of which are justified. I am concerned about the well-being, and I ask you to really take a look at an alternative. An alternative cannot be found such that we can save these funds and perhaps preserve some of our staffing. Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. Comments on the council?
I think our code enforcement person has done a tremendous job. I think the citizens have approved of our code enforcement person. I think it was, and I think we entered upon this with much trepidation. And I remember some of the comments being made about entering into a Gestapo state before all of you were on the council, by one council member. And I think by and large, people feel that at least they have a sounding board to go to. I think it's resolved a lot of issues in an amicable way, maybe not all of them, but at least it's not pitted neighbor against neighbor in all the instances it might have. And I think it's money well spent, and I do not think we want our police doing it because it adds an element of a kind of a legal enforcement right off the bat rather than a low-key kind of could you do this attitude, which is I think what we want. So I think unless there's some other reason to do so, namely we find that the person is not doing his or her job, or we can find a lesser cost person to do it, which might be something we would want to look into. I think this is the right way to go, and I do recognize that it's the way other jurisdictions have gone, unless they have an in-house person, as they do in at least a couple of jurisdictions I've looked into, and that is a far more expensive proposition.
Mr. Mayor? May I ask the city manager to comment on this item? It's my understanding that you desire to renew the contract, however, you are looking at other options downstream?
Well, Mayor and council members, it's only on a month-to-month pending the outcome of some of our other business plan investigations, and we'll see where that goes. But I would say that the vast majority of cities, at least in the West, are turning more and more, Councilmember McKeon is right, more and more to code enforcement as a facilitator, arbitrator, trying to settle disputes wherever possible. And also, it's probably not a particularly good use of law enforcement's time, nor are they necessarily trained in some of the things. It's more related to zoning issues typically. So, and I do believe it's in terms of cost, somewhat more important than just the superficial cost is getting someone who has the experience and maturity to work with residents on difficult issues. So we're using, I believe, 1 day a week, 2 days now, and I think it's resolved far more problems than it's created, and I think it's a very cost-effective way to resolve disputes, conflicts, and complaints, as opposed to drawing law enforcement in, which was duly noted before. There's an intimidation factor when someone shows up with a gun and a uniform saying, hey, your fence is too high.
So just to make a statement, comment to Carol's point that she's been the recipient of capricious complaints. That was one of my questions and discussions with you, city manager, that who is triaging the calls that this code enforcement officer goes out to make and to answer. What is the threshold of the complaint, how many complaints have to be filed, before it becomes an issue for the code enforcement officer to actually go. Because there has been, and this is not the first time I've heard this, that there has been instances where it seems like he addresses certain code enforcement problems and not others. And it's kind of based on maybe a closer circle of friends that he has in the town rather than objectively. So that's my issue that I've had for several years with this specific code enforcement officer, and hopefully, that has been rectified over the last year or so, but
5 months.
5 months, since you've been here, yes, 5 months, okay. So, hopefully, it's gotten better.
And I hope Carol's complaints haven't occurred in the past 5 months. I do want it to be open and transparent, and the code enforcement officer has all of the department heads at his disposal, particularly planning, where most of these are zoning quality issues. They wind up falling typically in that category, although this evening we've added trash cans to that, and I hope that his authority is judiciously used. And I think it's a good expenditure, and I think it's actually cost-saving to use code enforcement for these types of activities.
Joe? I have no comment.
Any other public comments? I would say that I've had nothing except good responses from residents over our code enforcement officer and what he's done. And I know at least 3 major issues that came up that could have resulted in lawsuits where he has managed to convince the residents that we're breaking the ordinances to comply with the ordinance in a manner that didn't force us to go to more direct routes. So I am very supportive of what's been done in the past, and I am very supportive of having this amendment passed. So no other comments I would make.
There's Elizabeth has some
Another-
editorials on the contract.
Okay.
The third whereas, we got an email that said the third whereas, you delete and increase the cost ceiling.
That's been taken out. I
Okay.
spoke to her about it, it's been taken care of.
Okay. So I would make a motion to approve this with the amendment that already has been taken out. I'll make a motion to approve that. Can I have a second? All in favor? Okay. The last item on the agenda is the item that was put in. It's the emergency item. It's the award of a contract for the Upper Atherton Channel Creek Stabilization and Slope Restoration Project, project number 56037. So I will bring this to the council and ask them for their comments on it. Any comments?
Necessary.
I spoke with John earlier, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I've spoken to some manager, it's an urgent.
All right, any public comments in this?
I move we award the contract.
Yes, second.
All in favor? Aye. Are there any future agenda items? Seeing none, I would ask, are there any other public comments?
First, congratulate you on getting on schedule. I'm also very happy to hear so much comment from all the council members about the need for public input on important issues. And I think, as I stated earlier, there's nothing more important than how we treat people who have worked with us many years. And while Jim Dancy had to leave earlier, but he and I have heard from a number of our residents after the article was wrote. We're very concerned. We want to make sure that we do reach out to the community before we make a decision of cutting off people who've been with us many years. Some of these people are single-parent families, are going to maybe face losing their homes, and there's serious consequences. People have been with us 10, 20 years. It's a great concern. And so, as I mentioned, we would like very much to have the city do a survey. I sent to Jerry one that I did some time back, because I really thought it was important to find out a sense of the community on important issues that we had to deal with. Because when you sit there, you don't hear other than from a few people. You don't really know a sense. Now, when you run for re-election, you do. You go around door to door and you hear the issues that you don't hear here. And so what we would like to do is be sure that before you go 3 months and you decide you're going to fire everybody, we want to make sure that there's an outreach to the community with a survey. We'd rather see the city do that. And based upon the results of that survey, then we would want the council to go for a special election. So when you think it won't pass, perhaps it won't, I can't guarantee that, but I'm confident that people in this community feel deeply about the people that serve us and have over the years and be supportive. And if it does then pass the a special election, $350 is what it would be, $1 a day, then we would balance the budget. That's all it would take. And then the city manager would be able to organize the city in a way that's very efficient, be responsive. We could all be proud of what we're doing. And if you are not willing to do that, I think we need to know that. Jim and I talked briefly out here. Then we would either do a survey or do an initiative. Now, an initiative could be done with 740 signatures. Then it would go to the ballot. We'd rather leave that to the council. We think that's the proper place for it. But we need to know so that if it's not going to be done by the council, that we would then, with the citizens group, just as we did some years back over the Dunbar issue, we would then go to the community. But we would hope that you're going to, but we need to know so we know how to proceed, whether council's going to initiate that or whether it has to be done by a citizens group. So we would appreciate hearing on that so that we would know how to proceed. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other public comments? If not, then you have another public comment?
Yes, sir. There was some lively discussion, obviously, surrounding the library, and I would just ask that you would give half of that time, maybe just one public hearing, and half that consideration at least to the proposal that's before you. I know there's variables in the budget that you're considering, and a lot of things are still in motion, but I think that public opinion is just as important for the library as it is for a master plan, as it is for a plan that's yet to be seen on what Interwest will bring to the table.